Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hello and welcome to Hoosier Football Tailgate here on Thursday evening, the 23rd of May, as we are approaching another holiday, Memorial Day, right around the corner, as we get prepared for a fun-filled summer. And the Indiana Hoosiers are well on their way into their summer workouts, as well as getting some last moment recruiting done, because the month of June will be a big month for the Hoosiers with all their individual camps that they will be having the month of June. Before we get started tonight, I want to thank Bet Online for their continual sponsorship of the Hoosier Football Tailgate. Remember, Bet Online is your number one source for all your summer sports wagering, with the Major League Baseball, golf, the NBA playoffs, as well as the NHL playoffs are happening right now. Make sure you get all your latest stats, news, scores available to follow your favorite team, your latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head over to the website today. You can get there by going to betonline.ag, either on your mobile device, laptop, or your desktop at home. You can reach BetOnline those ways and to make your wager on your favorite sports team or favorite sport. Remember, BetOnline is where the game starts. And again, I want to thank you for joining me here this evening. Had planned on to have Brian Auld on this evening, but when we were recording our segment for tonight, we had some really bad audio mostly on my part. And so I apologize. We're going to get Brian on at a date to be determined later, hopefully within the next few weeks, to get some of his expertise on the recruiting scene. He does quite a bit of recruiting stuff at Indiana Rivals site, as well as working for Catapult Recruitment, which is a recruiting destination for high school seniors and such, to get all their stuff evaluated, and of course having it in a big database that college recruiters can look up their information online. So we'll get Brian on at a date here in the near future. Hopefully that we can get him to come on and give some of his regular updates as he progresses through the summer months with everything. It's hard to believe that we're going to hear at the end of May already. And you got to think that high school startup dates are fastly approaching within 2 months for the high school 2025 season to get underway. And then, of course, did mention all of June with Coach Signetti's one-day camps down on Bloomington's campus. Those are critical times for the staff, not only to look at 2025 kids, but mostly to look at 26 and 27 kids that they can get on campus and have a chance to get them evaluated with these one-day camps. They can be very fruitful in finding some talent. Also, with some potentially here in the 25 camp, there may be some kids that come in with that. I know this past weekend, Rivals had their invite-only camp. Jameson Kitna, whose father played in the NFL as a quarterback. He is the quarterback at Lakota East High School, I believe, over in Ohio. He was in attendance. He is a good looking kid, 6'2", about 200 pounds. He can throw it. He can run with it. He can do a lot of things. So I'm sure he'll be one to watch here to see if they can get him on campus here through the month of June, because I know Indiana has a high interest on him. But right now he's got several MAC offers on the table, I believe, and then a few of schools on the outside of the Mid-American Conference in the group of 5. But big weekend here, and things that me and Brian had a chance to talk about. Unfortunately, like I said, audio grabbed us and weren't able to get him on here tonight. But May 31st is going to be a big day with overnight visits for the Hoosiers, with Julian Lewis, or Juju Lewis, however you want to put it. The USC quarterback commit will be making a visit to Indiana that weekend, but there's also some big other kids coming in as well. I think it's Gervais Hall, I believe, is one of them, a kid out of Tennessee. Let's see if I can get over to that side, but let's see. Hold on here. Share screen. There we go. Let's see if I can do something correctly tonight. Hey, there we go. Maybe a little bit blurry right now, but as you can see there is a few kids that are coming in outside of Julian Dial, kid out of Illinois, Belleville, Illinois, big defensive lineman, 6'4", 285. Jalen Bell will be in town, a kid out of Georgia, big time cornerback. You can see some of these kids do have some commitments, but they're still going to take a look at Indiana for that to see what the Hoosiers are all about. But you've got some kids from Carolina, the Daniels kid from St. Thomas Aquinas will be in, big time safety. And then, of course, some speed guys as well. And then let's see here. And then Garrett Reese, the kid out of Elmhurst, Illinois, who's a really good cornerback safety type, will be in. He's a commit to IU, but you can see a couple kids in this group. Indiana's in the mix with the Chandler kid out of Lawrence North. It's Wisconsin and Indiana. Jalen Bell, Miami of Florida is our biggest competition there. And then with the Dial kid, he's got to commit to Missouri. And then, of course, Juju Lewis, the young man, also in the mix, who is committed to go to USC. But as you can see, the Hoosiers do have a chance with that young man from the standpoint that he's got a great relationship with Tino, the quarterback coach. I do believe that it'll be difficult to get him away, but you can kind of, the NIL value on him is well over $1 million, as you can see. But who knows what will transpire? They may be able to flip him from USC and some of these other kids that are coming in. But a big weekend next week for the Hoosiers, with some on-campus official visits going to be taking place. And I say that a little from the standpoint, it's kind of weird that you got these kids coming in for official visits right now, and it's only May. Normally you would do these in December or the latter part of November, but in today's world, everything runs at a faster pace, and they try to get these kids in as soon as possible and get them locked up and hopefully committed to Indiana before their senior season. And then they just have to worry about holding them off, so to speak, as they go through it all. But a very good looking group of potential kids on campus. And I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Evan Parker kid is also on tap to come, as the Hoosiers have a solid 8 in the commitment column as of right now. And like I said, I do believe the Evan Parker kid is also scheduled to be on campus that weekend as well. It'll be good to get him around some of these kids that are coming from great distance and form a relationship with the kid that's out the back door. That is overly important in recruiting, especially for kids that come from great distance, that you can, bond with a kid that is, an hour away from campus, 30 miles away from campus, whatever it is. There's that sense that there's a home for these guys to go to when they can't get home. They sometimes will go home with one of their buddies, and it makes it a nice setup if they can do that. But Coach Signetti and his group of coaches have done a tremendous job trying to get these kids in and out, so to speak, with everything. It's all a crapshoot in the end anyway, with some of this stuff that transpires, and with recruiting and how it all is handled in today's world. And like I said, I wish we could have had Brian on tonight, it would have been, of course, a better opportunity for him to go through it, with that being his expertise. But sometimes you got to adapt, adjust, and improvise, and make no excuses, like I say. And so you get some of my insights on some of these kids that are coming in, and hopefully they can get the kid in at some point through the summer. I do believe he is a kid to keep an eye on. His stock is risen here over the summer, or early summer, late spring, mostly because of coaches being able to see these kids work out, especially now in Indiana with the availability of what we call a spring practice time for some of these high schools in Indiana. Coaches get to go and physically watch a kid's practice, maybe see a kid do some, specific drills to his position group. And it allows guys to get eyes on some of these kids, not only in the state of Indiana, but throughout the country. So whatever it means in terms of getting a chance to watch a kid. The other thing too, that, I did touch on with Brian, is the DNA of NIL and how that is impacting high school recruiting. States like down south, there's kids that already have name and image and likeness deals that are just seniors in high school and, making 200-300K. Juju Lewis, I think, is approaching $1 million in some of NIL money with his deals. I think he has a couple different sponsorship deals already. And that's even before he gets on campus. So you can imagine some of the kids of what they're doing in today's world when it comes to that aspect of stuff with NIL. It's just a new beast out there, and coaches are going to have to face it and deal with it. But, kids are very aware of it. Now in Indiana, a young man cannot do any type of NIL deals. Now, I know it's something that the state legislature is looking at. I'm sure the IHSAA and the governing body for high school sports in Indiana will have their say-so in it, and I doubt they would be in favor of it. But when you've got kids in other parts of the country where their state doesn't have something in place to keep kids away from NIL, it's a big advantage for those kids. And some of these kids, I believe that those kids that are in the top, 10 recruits in the state are truly Power 5 type of kids. In today's social media world, I do believe they would find ways to get their sponsorships with people, and so they can promote them on all the different social media platforms. But right now, in Indiana, that is not an issue. We did talk a little bit as well on the state of recruiting in Indiana and how the Indiana Hoosiers are being received throughout the state of Indiana and more or less throughout the Midwest. And of course, Brian felt that they were highly thought of, even from the kids and recruiter standpoints. And that's good to hear. But when you have a staff like Coach has, where you've got the younger guys that can be very relatable to these kids, it's a big help in that arena. And Coach Sig's one of those guys who's going to shoot kids straight. They want to know exactly from A to Z. And if you watched any of that Next Up podcast that was on, I believe yesterday, and Coach Signetti had about a 30-minute interview during that podcast, you see why kids like him, because his message has been the same since the time he arrived on campus. He's still saying some of the same things that he talked about in his presser when he took the job at Indiana. And you can see that blueprint that he talks about quite often and what that entails. And I think that's very important when the message that you're sending is a consistent message from A to Z, no matter who you're talking to in the building, whether it's Scott Dolson, the AD, or Juju Lewis, who'll be in on the week of the 31st. When that message is consistent and to the point, black and white, and no complacency in the message, you can see why there are high expectations, not only from the people within the program and around it, but kids from the outside. They're anxious to see what Indiana does. And one of the biggest things that Indiana has to do is, knock down some barriers, perception barriers a lot, because they still need to try to go up and keep kids and get kids away from the Ohio States and Michigan States and Michigans that come into Indiana and recruit, and take some of the top talent out of Indiana. And so that is still a big chore. And I do believe over time we'll see that from the staff and everything that's involved with that. But again, just to recap here quickly, big weekend coming up from a recruiting standpoint. Juju Lewis and other commitments, and some that are, weighing their options with Indiana coming in. That May 31st weekend will be a big weekend, and the Hoosiers stand right now with 8 total commitments. And I do believe that will grow through the month of June and July. And before you know it, we'll be into high school football season, followed shortly behind college football, because it's going to go quite fast here through the next couple of months. Other thing I want to talk about today, something that we've talked quite frequently about, this House versus the NCAA settlement finally became a settled, signed settlement, I should say, over the last day. This was a $2.8 billion settlement that eventually would turn into a revenue sharing model that is going to be in place. And there are things that they still have to work out. And I do think you'll see some of this come to fruition and go into effect in the fall of 2025. Now, some of the things that, kind of caught my eye with all this that was talked about quite extensively on a lot of different networks and things of that nature. But um, the one big thing is that there will be some form of revenue sharing model up and running for 2025. With this settlement, the schools were told probably in early May that they can potentially expect to see another $20 million plus in their athletic budgets going into this year. That will happen. Now, one thing that the NCAA is doing to pay this $2.8 billion over, I believe it's a 10-year period, is that they will reduce the payouts for any of the NCAA tournaments and such, and the conference as well will help facilitate that payment. The Power Five schools, especially, they're going to probably have a bigger burden than the Group of Five schools. I know some of the Group of Five schools wanted a little bit more. I know there was a proposal for the Power Five schools to pay 60% of that pie that they split up, but I think it ultimately came down that the Power Five schools were going to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of 25%, somewhere in that neighborhood of the $2.8 billion that the NCAA is going to shell out here over the next 10 years. And like I said, that was going to be something that the NCAA was going to do and restrict some of the payouts and reduce some of the payouts that they would do for different conference situations, championships, and things of that nature with everything. I know that there are some things that kind of caught my eye as well with all this. From that standpoint, you can expect that 20 million that each school is going to have in their budgets for this next year, that money to trickle into the hands of the student athletes on every campus that has that. But right now, the total landscape of college athletics has changed. It's something that now there's a lot of different things that are going to be up in the air for the next year or so. There are some things that are not going to be resolved this year as it pertains to how they are going to do certain things. They're going to have to hammer out details on what that revenue sharing model is going to look like. The new governance models. This is where we talked about the kind of the power conferences and then everybody else in terms of, what the power conferences pay versus what, the lower conferences will or will not pay out in terms of paying the student athletes in general. That's going to be drastically different. So there's going to be a difference between what's in the Mid-American Conference versus what's going to be available in the Big Ten. There's going to be a difference there. And so some of those things are going to have to be hammered out and such with some of it. And then with these new revenue sharing models, that payout could eventually move up to around 30 million, as I saw in one report as well. So that was one of the big takeaways from that. The other thing with the landscape and such, you've got this situation with Title IX and what all is going to entail with schools. I know that some of the non-revenue generating programs are in jeopardy right now because the two biggest revenue generating sports is football and men's basketball. So they're going to want a bigger piece of that pie. And some of the non-revenue generating sports in Title IX, how that will be worked through, these non-revenue generating sports are in jeopardy. And you could see some schools cutting programs because of it, because they will not be able to sustain those non-revenue sports, because there's just not going to be enough money to go around in some respects. So that's a thing that we'll have to keep an eye on, and Title IX and how that is addressed. The other thing that was talked about and is in the process of being figured out is roster size and scholarships. I know in the sport of football right now, you've got 85 full scholarships and 120 roster limit. That's all your scholarship players plus walk-ons. There is a possibility that that number from 120 will be reduced to 100, and the 85 will go to 100 total scholarships. So every kid that's in your program will be on, quote unquote, a scholarship. Now, football coaches will not like that suggestion. I can tell you right now. There was a proposal a few years ago of wanting to increase the roster from 120 to 135 because of the contact sport that it's become, injuries, concussions, and things of that nature. And coaches were finding that having 120 on their roster to start the year was down to about 90, 95 at the, towards the end of the year. And so coaches want to increase the roster as well as scholarships. But some of the suggestions that I've seen is to reduce the roster, but increase the scholarships. Now, for sports outside of like the sport of football, that could be a good thing, because they may be able to increase their roster sizes and also increase their scholarship money for those sports that don't fall under the numbers that a football program does. So they're going to have to treat football totally differently than how they treat basketball, baseball, other sports, be it softball, women's basketball. Football was always the one that's outside of the figures when it comes to roster sizes and scholarship enrollment, scholarship sizes. So that will all have to be worked out here in the near future. But like I said, for some programs, it could be a big impact in terms of raising their scholarship dollars. But on the other side of it, it is also going to be an issue with non-revenue sports potentially being cut. And I think I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. I like the fact that their kids are able to go compete in whatever sport that their heart is into. And they want to go be the best they can be in any sport that they choose, irregardless of revenue generating, non-revenue generating. But those are all things that will still have to be worked out as well. Also, the recruiting seasons, how that will all pay into the equation, and the math in terms of how these payouts are going to go between the Power Fives and the G5s, because they are trying to reduce what the G5s get anyway. And they don't want any of the G5 schools to get any more of the piece of the pie. So that could drastically impact that level of competition as well. The Mid-American Conference schools, you've got Conference USA, you've got some other ones, the Sun Belt, all these other conferences where there is still good football played, and some of those top tiered teams in those conferences could beat some of the lower divisional teams of Power Five conferences. They're all going to potentially looking, especially those top programs, are going to be looking to find ways to move up the ladder and secure themselves paydays. So again, that will all have to be ironed out in the end with that as well. The other thing that I also saw with this was the potential that there would be a new governing body established to look rule over the Power Five super conferences, or whatever you want to look, however you want to look at it. They would play with a different set of rules, I guess you could say, from what there's currently in place. And then there'll be a governing body for other institutions when you look at it from that standpoint. I do believe there'll be, some of those lower G5 schools may drop down to what was known as 1AA at a long time ago, because they're just not going to be able to compete on a grander stage when they have a limited budget already, and they're not going to be able to, pay the kids as much as those power conferences are going to pay. And right now, with the transfer portal, what those G5 schools are seeing, and some of the 1AAs and even Division II schools out there, is with the transfer portal, you're seeing some of the best players in those conferences wanting to find ways to move up because it's more money to them. And for some kids, they're trying to take care of whoever's left at home, mom, dad, or just a mom and a sister, brother, whatever. And you're seeing it already where you've got kids that are leaving those schools. And that's, good for the kid, but it's also a detriment to those programs, because when you lose one of those really good players, it's very hard to replace. And you just don't have the money to compete with the power conferences. Now, what else you can see with this, whatever structure they use to pay these players at different institutions, you could see some disparaging things there with the rich getting richer, a la Georgia, Alabama, some of these big time alumni bases, Oklahoma, Texas, that have deeper pockets than other schools. It could create a pretty darn good gap there from that standpoint, that may not be what you would call a even playing field. So while there are some things settled, there are a lot of things that are unsettled that are going to have to be looked at, evaluated, and put down prior to the start of the 2025 seasons, so that everybody's on the same page. What was done the other day at least provided some guidance and direction and settlement aspects of what is the guardrails with all this was established with this settlement and the $2.8 billion payout that's going to occur. And I do believe kids that played in 2016 and forward will get some type of money from all this as well. Now, I don't know what that will look like, or how that's going to be divvied up. But if you played college football in 2016, there's a likelihood you could see some money. How much? Don't know. Probably not a whole lot. But the reality of it is they'll get some of it. So interesting things all around here as we go through the summer months. Again, sorry that Brian and our recording wasn't able to go tonight, but I did want to bring you some updates on what is occurring for Indiana over the next couple of weeks and through the month of June, as well as discuss this big news item with the settlement that we just kind of discussed in general there. A lot of different stories online that you can go read. Yahoo Sports does a pretty good job with it. And some other entities out there as well. But I think it was important that that got settled and we got an idea here. We'll just have to wait and see how that all shakes out and how that looks for the players, especially at Indiana, and what may that entail for everybody within the Big Ten, as well as other Power Five conferences. Again, thanks to Bet Online for their sponsorship of this program. Do appreciate their help in everything here at Hoosier Football Tailgate. Again, if you can do me a favor, get on our YouTube page over there at Hoosier Football Tailgate. Go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified when our videos drop. But by subscribing to the channel, it helps us get a bigger profile, and also it helps bring you all the best of everything from the thoughts of Indiana football to you each and every week as we fastly approach the start of the 25 season here in the next couple months. It's going to go fast. So we'll bring you as much content as humanly possible and updates. Just stay tuned. You can follow me on Twitter at Coach Griff 55, as well at Hoosier Tailgate on Twitter as well. I thank you for joining us this evening on a altered type of program, and we'll get Brian Alt on at another time. But for everyone that's going to enjoy this Memorial Day holiday, have a safe and happy holiday. And if you're traveling, remember, take your time and buckle up and make sure you're keeping an eye on all those around you for a safe travel and trip to wherever you go. Well, I am the coach, Shannon Griffith. You have been watching Hoosier Football Tailgate here on the Believe Network. Catch you down the road in another time as we bring you the best coverage that possibly we can bring each and every week here on Hoosier Football Tailgate on Believe. Until then, take care and